All right. Our guest today is Barbara Gail, and she's a medium, a healer, an author, and much, much more. And she's an NDE experiencer. And so I found her story, what I do know of it, quite fascinating. And so we're going to talk to her a little bit today about her experiences with starting with her NDE and then the aftermath and what that all entails. So welcome, Barbara, and thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me. This is always an enjoyable time for me. I like to be able to give more information to people because questions are abundant. And it's always a challenge to try to get your questions answered. So the more information we can put out there, the easier it makes everything for everybody, I think.
Yeah, indeed, definitely.
Yeah, a little bit about me if you want me to start that.
Yeah, why don't you give us a little bit of background and maybe a short synopsis of your NDE, because I know you've talked about that a lot. And I will link in the description of the video to a more in-depth version of your NDE. So folks, if they really want to dig in that haven't heard it before, can. How does that sound?
All righty. Well,
or you can go in depth as you want.
Sure.
So
I think I'm just going to reach into whatever spirit is giving me, whatever's coming down through the ethers here. And I have a lot of titles. You said a medium, and you started naming all the titles. And I've had lots of titles: spiritual medium, mystic, psychic, clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairtestings. I mean, we use a lot of titles and labels for communication purposes. And what we're really trying to do is give form to the formless. That's what we're really doing. And we're creating a language. But for me, and I do use all the titles because how else is a person going to know anything about you? But to me, if I was to sum it up, I would say conscious connection with the light. Because if you're consciously connected with the light, we're always connected to the light. We can't be any other way. But if you're consciously connected to the light, that means you're hearing what they have to say. And then you can channel that information through. So I like to say that I'm a direct channel for the light, because that is what I do. That's how I get my information. And you've been on the internet just like I have, and you hear a lot of people saying a lot of things about what they know. And sometimes I want to ask, how do you know that? Just like quizzically, how do you know that? So sometimes information is garnered by hand-me-downs. I call them hand-me-downs. Your legacy from whatever your parents or your grandparents or religious upbringing. But to me, that's also fallible. That's why I strive for the direct communications, which I've had, according to my mom. She was here for 101 years. She stayed as long as she wanted to, for sure. And she said at 3 years old, I began talking about life on other planets. And then shortly after that, I started giving messages that saved people's lives and finding lost pets. And the list just grew and grew and grew. So I came in consciously connected with the light. I remember being able to see these people walking around my bedroom when I was a little kid, and they just wanted me to give messages to their loved ones. I didn't know that, so I got scared. But wow. I grew up, and I realized what I was here for. And another popular term that people like to use is light worker. And I've been asked by a lot of people, well, what do you mean by light worker? And what are light workers doing? And if you're a light worker, then why do light workers have sometimes so many challenges? And you're right, light workers have a lot of challenges because great light on planet Earth also attracts great opposition. And I think a lot of people can probably identify with that. So light workers are not chosen to sit in an ivory tower and just, ta-da, be a light worker. If you're a light worker, you're sent where there's darkness. You're sent where there's challenges. And I equate darkness with ignorance, that you're just ignorant of universal laws. You're mostly ignorant of your connection with the divine light. Because if everyone on this planet was aware of who they really are, there would be no wars. There would be no fighting. This would be, it would be heaven on earth if everybody had this instantaneous wake up and said, oh my God, I am a body of light. I am a being of light. I am really a spirit of light and love, and I just borrowed this physical body. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? It would be wonderful. So the common denominator here is people don't know who they are. And that is one of the messages, one of the gifts of a near-death experience, to show you there's something more than the physical. There's something so much more than the physical realm. And while you can hear so many stories, and I can share when my body physically died, I can share that story. But what's really important is what happens when you come back from your near-death experience. Then what? And I've heard from so many different people. Some are very excited. Some say that they come back with psychic abilities. Some come back with healing abilities. Some have seen spiritual figures that have talked to them, given them information, predictions about the future. And others come back and say, I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. I don't know what the big deal is. Others come back and they're afraid. They feel disoriented. So it's really important to nurture yourself. And if you are so inclined to find somebody that can give you that kind of guidance, how to move forward after your near-death experience. Okay.
I wanted to ask you, do you think you're talking about people who see different things in their NDEs? Do you think that, like some people don't see anything and so on, do you think that that's a direct result of their, perhaps, for lack of a better way to put it, spiritual evolution, so to speak, or their awareness of who they are, like you said?
Their perception. It's their perception, right? And if you expect to experience something horrible, you may very well experience something horrible. I mean, guidance have told me, because I saw where my cat went. After my cat passed on, I came home one day and my cat was lying there at the front door. You can imagine. And the guilt that took over, that she passed alone. And so when I carried her through the house and I put her down on the chair, and I know I'm getting off the topic of my near-death experience, but like I said, I'm going wherever guidance is taking me.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I put her down on the chair and I kneeled to pray over her, and suddenly there was this loud whooshing noise, like woo, like if you were in a train station. I lived in California for a long time, and I'd be on the BART. It's called the BART, the train, and there'd be this loud noise on both sides of the train. I grew up in Chicago, so there would be the L. So I'm really familiar with trains, and it sounded like that. It sounded like that noise, and I thought I was going to fall forward onto the cement, but I never moved a muscle. And suddenly when the noise stopped, I saw my cat and she came out of the light. And I swear she was beautiful and so alive. And as soon as I realized she's in the light, she went back into the light, just disappeared into the light. That loud whooshing noise started again. I was going backwards, at least I felt like I was. Physically, my physical body never moved. And then it just stopped. So, I mean, I've literally, like I said, I only talk about what I've known, what I know from direct experience. So I literally saw where she went. And I've had my dogs who have passed on, I've communicated with them as well after they've passed on. So I know that it's quick. They immediately, easily go into the light. I have communicated with children and unborn children, children that do not make it into the physical. And they always tell me they knew they weren't going to really be born. That was part of the plan. That was actually the plan, that they would not come through. So nothing is by chance. We get the last remnants of information. So we're wondering and we're worried and concerned, but everything has a purpose. And so kids go immediately into the light. There's no time in between where they're waiting. Animals go immediately into the light. And I'm talking about the divine light, the light of love, the light of our source and creator. Now, when you're talking about adults with fully developed ego personalities, we'll say they can have so many superstitions and belief systems that if they cling to them, it will take them a while to release or to let go. It can take lifetimes for them to release and to let go, as a matter of fact. So timing here and timing on the inner planes is very different. So what was your original question? I went on a tangent about where our pets go.
Well, you kind of answered the question. I was asking how, if you felt that people's
their experiences,
their experiences or whatever,
right,
or their evolution, or as you said, their perception. Perception is everything. I agree with you on that
right.
too.
Yeah.
Maybe you could go into your NDE a little bit, and then we can get some more on this,
Okay.
on
All
some of
right.
these
I'm going to
questions.
summarize it though, because it's such a long story.
Yeah, just give us the synopsis version.
Yeah, let's do that. The Reader's Digest condensed version. I had been born with a heart condition. It's called WPW. And when I was a kid, my heart would get up to 500 beats a minute. And at that time, and as an adult, nobody knew at those times what to do about it. As a matter of fact, they had put me on a medication called digitalis that I found out later from the cardiologist who did the surgery and corrected it. He said, "Oh my God, people were dropping dead like flies when we put them on digitalis." I said, "Oh, well, it wasn't my time to go." Well, he didn't really get that line of thinking. He just kind of rolled his eyes and kept talking. But this one particular night, my heart just, it was racing and it was hard. And I knew I was in trouble. And I went downstairs in the living room. We had a bay window, and I loved that room because I had plants in the window. And I went down there to do some self-healing with God, and was not working. I was just getting worse, and I could feel this incredible pain in my chest and my Oh, a heart attack is really painful. It's not something you want to ever go through. And there was this light that was shining through our bay window, and the logical mind tends to kick in. And my logical mind thought somebody was shining their bright lights from the car in the window. And I was very annoyed by it. But the light got brighter and brighter, and with it came a very intense heat. And suddenly, at some point, I shifted and I became a part of that light. And it was no longer annoying. Believe me, it was euphoric. And the heat was just like a balmy, wonderful, soothing feeling. And I was very happy when to the right of me, there was somebody was approaching to the right of me, up kind of like by the ceiling. I saw that. And I looked over and I saw it was Christ. And he'd been talking to me since I was a kid, but never as a religious figure, always as a friend and a teacher. Religion was never mentioned. And when I saw him, I got excited. I'm like, oh, this is so great. And he asked me, "Are you coming with me?" Well, I had a 10-year-old daughter sleeping upstairs, and I knew I did not want her to wake up and see that her mom's body was lying there lifeless in the morning. So my first reaction to him was, no, I can't. I can't leave my daughter. And as soon as I said that, the pain was back in my body, which I don't like pain. And it's a really bad pain when you have a heart attack. And I remember distinctly starting to say to him, wait a minute. Like, I think I made a mistake. And he said, "We will help you begin again." And I can only describe the feeling of what happened next. I don't really have the explanation for it, but it was like there was this billowy cloud underneath my body where before I couldn't move. I was literally, honest to God, being lifted up off the ground to a standing position. I don't think my feet touched the ground. And I floated from the living room into the kitchen, and I was seated there. I did not know what "we will help you begin again" meant. And it was very early hours. And I just sat there. Like, what am I going to do? And again, I'm going to shorten this story. So my mom called. She was in a different state. I was in Arizona at the time. And she said, Barbara, I just read this amazing book by Linda Goodman. Do you remember Linda Goodman? She had love signs and star signs, and she wrote books about astrology and crystals. I don't know if you're familiar with her or not.
No, I'm not actually.
Okay, her books were wonderful. And my mother said she had read a chapter she had in her book about Ralph Bergstresser. And she said, Ralph Bergstresser is very close to you. He's in Scottsdale, Arizona, and he's this amazing healer. And I just know you're supposed to see him. Write down his phone number and call him. Now, my mom didn't know what had happened, and I wasn't going to let her know. So when I got off the phone with her, I thought, I don't know who this person is. Why am I going to call him? But I did. And I left a kind of benign message just saying, this is my name, and someone told me I should give you a call. I'm not really sure why. Thank you. And that was it. Literally, that was it. And he called me back in, I don't know what, 10, 15 minutes, very quickly. And he said, you need to come over here. I have to see you. And I said, oh, I can't do that. I'm not feeling very well. And he said, yes, you can. I'm only 10 minutes from you, and there's someone in your house with you who can help you drive. And I told him, oh, no, that's my daughter, and she's only 10 years old. She can't do that. He goes, yes, she can. You put your feet on the pedals. She'll help you steer. You can do it. You'll get here. And he says, you're so close. And his voice was so reassuring, so calming. I believed him. So we did. We went to Ralph's house. The secretary answered with phones ringing and papers everywhere and books. She took care of my daughter. He took me into this back room that was, I can only compare it maybe to a scientific lab. And he told me about his work with Tesla. He told me about his secret work with our government, the U.S. government. He hooked me up to electrodes and had me drink who knows what, and everything was charged with electrical vibrations and frequencies. And he worked on me from morning till sundown. So probably 8-10 hours.
What was his name again?
Ralph Bergstresser.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack right there.
Oh,
I could probably ask you a dozen questions. I won't right now, but maybe some other time.
Honestly, God bless him. He's since passed on, and wherever he is, I hope he's listening whenever I talk about him, because I am so indebted to this man because of his kindness and his generosity and his brilliance, his genius, and his connected consciousness with the Lord.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question backing up just a little bit? When you said you met Christ, and then you said he's been talking to you since you were a little girl. Can I ask you how you knew? Did he present himself as Christ, or did you just know? Was it just a knowing, or
No,
I'm just curious.
No, my family was Jewish. And so I did not have any contact with Christ, who, however, was Jewish.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, he didn't ever give up his religion, so to speak. And just as a side note, I've traveled to many other planets and worked with many masters, ascended masters and saints. And from what I've learned, there's only religion on this planet. That's it. It's only here. It is not anywhere else. But no, when he came to me, he looked like all the pictures I'd seen, sort of. He doesn't look exactly like them. And he told me who he was when he was here. He told me we'd spent lifetimes together, that he knew me. He called me his daughter, and I'm not sure that if he meant that in a specific sense. He might call everybody his son and his daughter. So I can't really say that. I never questioned it. I just listened to what he said. And he's been with me. He has been a lifesaver for me many, many, many times. So I'll just share this as a kind of, to me, a funny story. So I would talk about him as a kid, and it would drive my Jewish mother up the wall. She had a really hard time with that. And she'd say, "Stop talking about that already." And I remember one day my dad said, "Leave her alone. He was a nice Jewish boy. He never harmed anybody. He just wanted everybody to be nice to everybody." She could talk about worse things. God bless my dad.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So, yeah, so I never asked for his presence consciously. I mean, I was just a little kid. Like he said, we'd known each other lifetimes. So, yeah.
That's actually a great answer. That's kind of what I was looking for. So I appreciate you going into a little bit of detail on that. So,
Okay.
because I've heard other people say that, and I always, on a video I'm watching, and I always want to ask them, well, how did you know? What?
Yeah, good.
Not that I was doubting them or anything. It's like, what? Anyways.
Yeah. Well, Mother Cabrini, do you know who Mother Cabrini is?
A little bit, yeah. And I read a little bit about her in your book. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and
I had heard of her before, but I don't know much about her. And
yeah,
so,
she physically also materialized, looked just like a human being, not a spirit. And she spoke to me. Padre Pio physically materialized. So I don't know, maybe they think I'm not very bright, and if they don't make it obvious, I won't get it. You know? I mean, I'm not an astrologer. I'm not a numerologist. I have not learned how to do those, how to communicate with the realms of light through astrology or numerology. And like, I kind of think of myself as, well, they made it easy for me because they thought, well, she won't get it any other way, But
I think they probably do that for all of us.
if we'll listen, yeah.
Yeah, if we'll listen at all, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But so at the end of the day, Ralph Bergstresser, again, it's an incredible story. He said he was going to take my daughter and I to Denny's to eat, which may sound ridiculous to go from that where we've been. And so when we got to Denny's, my daughter was entertaining herself with those coloring placemats. And he said to me, "Do you know you had a massive heart attack and died?" But I could care less about the whole dying thing. I understood that. I said, yeah, okay. I said, what I want to know, Ralph, is why did you call me right back? Why did you give up your entire day to spend with me? And this is where I first heard the word light worker. And he said, because my guides told me she's a light worker. She has to remain on the planet. You must help her. And then he said, and I always do what my guides tell me to do. So he was teaching me a lot at that time, besides helping him and Christ helping to, and my mother got enlisted in this, to bring me back here to stay. But he was teaching me a work ethic. Always do what your guides tell you to do. But in order to do that, and I get this question from clients a lot when I do readings for them, how do I meet my guides? How do I know who my guides are? How do I know if they're in the light of love or if they're not? Because people worry about that a lot.
That was going to be my next question.
Yay! Okay.
So there's a synchronicity right there.
There you go. I started meditating before I knew what meditation was. And people are very sometimes challenged or put off saying, oh, yeah, I know I should meditate, but I can't do it, blah, blah. Meditating is nothing more than creating a space, physical space, in which you can be quiet in the sense of you don't have a lot of distractions and you're going to listen. That's what it is. It's like answering the telephone. All right. Guidance is willing to talk to you, but you have to pick up the phone and listen. And so I always did that. My childhood was, there was a lot of abuse. It was very brutal. I'm sure that's why I had the divine help that I had to even survive it. So I learned very quickly to identify the positive energy because I was already raised with enough negative energy difference.
Do you agree with the sentiment that we plan our lives out before we come to a certain degree? That we sort of have a blueprint, not every detail. We have free will, but we kind of have a blueprint where we want to hit these mile markers, so to speak. Do you agree with that, or
I
you have your
do.
take on that?
I do. I have spoken with many women who have lost children who had miscarriages. Um, and the children always say, tell her not to be upset. I never intended to come in. I just needed that 30 seconds. Or babies that pass on into the light from sudden death syndrome or crib death. They will tell me, this was always agreed upon. This is all I needed to finish up. And so,
Do you think that was like a trial that the parents needed to deal
well,
with, to learn to address their grief or what have you?
there's so many reasons why. I mean, that's why
Yeah,
when I do an individual reading, instead of just giving a general answer, that can be one answer. But
right.
there's so many because um, everything that we do and feel affects someone else. Everything. When I had a near-death experience where I did not actually die, my body didn't physically die, but I was definitely on the way out. It was an anaphylaxis reaction to peanuts. And the restaurant just didn't listen when I said no peanuts and no peanut oil. But I mean,
Uh-oh.
my near-death experience affected the restaurant. It affected the people at the table. It affected, everybody in the emergency room, the doctors, the nurses. There is this, what I love the term ripple effect, because there's this ripple effect. And it's kind of what you're talking about, because it affects everybody. Everybody is affected. Everybody has something to learn. Are you going to be compassionate? Are you going to be forgiving? Um, Suicide in some religions is really the people who are left are just made to suffer on top of everything else, thinking that it's a sin. And I wish I could wave a magic wand, make a lot of changes in people's consciousness, but that's definitely one of them. Because sin, my term for sin is simply insane nonsense. It's all of these judgments are just horrific. Nobody, and this is, I'm just saying, speaking my truth, what guidance has told me, nobody enters this life without it being sanctioned by the divine light, and nobody leaves without it being sanctioned by the divine light. So if you take it to the nth degree of knowledge, there is no suicide, there is no murder, even though it can look like there is the way it's being played out. But that's part of the learning. That's part of everybody is learning. We have to wake up and remember who we are, because the trajectory on this planet, I mean, whether you're looking at the prophecies from Nostradamus or Casey, or I mean, there have been a lot of prophecies from a lot of people. I've made my own that I say unfortunately came to pass because what I saw was not good, and yet 9/11 did happen. These other wars that I've seen before they've broken out have happened, and the direction that we are going in, it can change. We can still change it
Yes, I
if
agree.
we wake up, if we refuse to accept the violence, but we have to. We have consciousness.
Yeah, even as far as religion is concerned, I have a Christian background, and I probably know the Christian scriptures better than most of the so-called Christians that make those claims. But basically teaches that God is love and that love keeps no record of wrongs. And so all of this guilt and stuff about sin is totally
Well,
misunderstood by the vast majority,
yeah.
unfortunately.
I think I better clarify my statement, because when we cross over, there is accountability. There is accountability. We are our own judge,
Right.
because you already know what I'm going to say, but from what I've seen, we feel everything we made others feel. And I have been told that by um, people who have hurt me, who have passed on, and who have literally come and asked for my forgiveness. So there is definitely accountability when people say, well, are you telling me everyone just gets off scot-free? Because I've read this, that where people say, you cross over into the light, and there's no bad, there's just isness and love and blah, blah, blah. Well, but there is accountability. There's accountability, and yes, there's definitely redemption. But we are vibrating at a certain.
You reap what you sow. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's at a certain vibration. And depending on what energies you've taken on, that will show what frequency you're aligned with. So somebody whose vibration is one of peace and calm, because that's what they've chosen, is not going to align themselves with the frequency of horrific wrongdoing. They're not going to do it because that's not their vibration. But
I tell everybody there's no God up there with a smite button on his computer smiting anybody who does something wrong. All the consequences are already built in. You reap what you sow, basically. But that's kind of my take on it.
It's cause and effect.
Yeah, cause and effect. That's a good way to put it.
You take situations, and then that where children and people are shot down, which is happening today as we speak all over the world. And you say, well, why are these bad things happening to good people? There are a multitude of reasons. I mean, there's a reason why you chose to live in the state and in the country you're in. There's a reason why I did the same thing. And there's a reason why people who are living in countries where they're war-torn and they're suffering are living there as well. And it's to bring the attention to what we're doing to one another. They agreed. It's horrible. It's unconscionable, the things that are going on this planet. And it's all geared towards waking people up. People wake up through physical suffering, mental suffering, emotional suffering. It seems like people otherwise will just slide along without, I don't know, paying attention to the fact that we're all connected. And if one person or one country is still suffering in the world, then there's going to be suffering for everybody. We have got to change this globally. And
I agree.
There are many here from other planets who are watching this, because we are heading towards a crescendo. And sometimes they can help us. John, Commander Spaceship Fight for Weather Control, saved my life and my friend's life.
I just read about him a little bit, and it is in your book, I guess.
Yeah. My book is called.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's called The Immense Release, and it's on Amazon. And the title came from that letting go of this physical, and it was the immense release.
I'll link to it when I post this video.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, you said we're reaching a crescendo.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that some people call it the Great Awakening or what have you. A lot of people are waking up, but there seems to be quite a divide too. There's a lot of people who, don't want to get woken up. It's like they're still in bed, and you got to throw cold water on them, and they're just getting mad because they want to go back to sleep, or stay asleep, whatever. It's kind of my analogy.
Yeah. The expression history repeats itself. Wars have been repeating themselves. Human behavior has been repeating itself. In the 60s, there were people who had love-ins, so we go through these periods of people who want war and people who want peace, and it just keeps repeating. But we are getting to a point where, at least from what I've been told by divine presence, that just so much will be allowed. That's all. There will be limits. They're going to cap what's going on here.
So do you think that humanity has made progress, and that we actually have an opportunity to get past this upheaval, so to speak? And as you said, everything is for us to learn from, to grow from, so that we can overcome it and finally ring in that golden age at some point. I don't know how long that might take, maybe 5-10 years or another 100 years, I don't know. But for me, at least, I seem to see a lot more people waking up. I've been on this path, I don't know, I'd probably about 30 years, slowly. And I see a lot more people waking up in the last 5 years than I have the whole rest of the time I've been on this path. I don't know. Maybe it's just that I'm more focused on it. What's your take on that, on any of that?
Well, there are two kinds of predictions. And I know this from experience. There are predictions that when I see something's going to happen, I know nothing will change it. With my aunt, I had to tell my mom, you need to go back and see your sister. She will not be here in November. And my mom, knowing me very well by that point, went back to see her sister. And my aunt passed away October 31st. So she was not here in November, but they got to say goodbye. And I knew that those kind of predictions, when guidance shows me it's not going to change. Many predictions that are made saying, I'm holding on to this rhodochrosite. Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's actually a love stone. The vibration it holds is love.
What's it? A bloodstone, did you say?
Rhodochrosite.
Oh, rhodochrosite. Okay.
Right, yeah.
My dad was a rock hound, so I actually have heard of that.
I just love crystals. I love them. If you saw my desk, you go, oh my God. But then, so there's one kind of prediction where I know nothing's going to change it. That's the way it's going to be. So here's the information. How do you want to prepare? What do you want to do with it? The other kind of prediction is based on where you are now. If you don't change anything, and if all the people you're interacting with don't change anything, this is what will happen. And that's why globally I say, this is the trajectory we're on, but it doesn't have to happen. So it's really important to know that.
So you don't. So just to make sure I'm understanding you, you think we're on the wrong trajectory, and not enough people have changed to take us off of that trajectory. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I've spoken about this. I've just only recently started speaking about it because I don't like sensationalism and I don't like being an alarmist. But what my guides first showed me was this was the first prediction, if you call it that, was that in October of 2025 that spaceships would fill the skies because life here would be so, we'll just say, unbearable that the peacemakers would be removed by the spaceships and we would be transported to another realm that way. Then, and that was the prediction for about 2 years. Then they
How long ago was that prediction?
It changed
approximately.
Yeah, so about 2 years before this year.
Okay.
And this year they took it out to 2020, the end of 2027, so going into 2028. And I asked them why, and I was told because it's fluid now. It's fluid.
So that's actually a good sign.
Well, I don't judge it good or bad, to be honest. So, I know I've been on other planets consciously. And so I know that it's very hard to be here because we are in the physical bodies. It's a planet of limitation. I mean, maybe you had these dreams. When I was a little kid, I dreamt of flying. I loved those flying dreams.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I've talked to a lot of people, and those flying dreams you're remembering just a little bit about the fact that you are literally out of your body at night flying around.
Yes.
But your interpretation and your perception of it is different. How you see it, how you bring it back to the conscious mind. So, yeah, there can still be changes.
Well, yeah, and I see that as a good thing, I guess. So,
I do too.
But the possibility is there that we can still change the directory. Thank goodness. So, but I knew that too. Yeah, I've had those dreams since I was a kid, and occasionally, even as an adult, I have one now and then. And it's like I want to have more of those, like I used to when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So,
that's meditation. When people ask me about, I never had a near-death experience, and what is it all about, and how can I access the light, the realms of light? And I say, meditate. If you meditate every day, you'll raise your vibration and you'll be able to enter the higher frequency realms, and you will have those experiences. I mean, when I was in God's presence in 1999, that was after a lot of, dedicated spiritual work, because you have to purify, you have to rarefy your frequencies, your vibration, your energy to come up to that level to be able to do that. So that was not something that just happened or was just handed to me on a silver platter. That was something that I did day after day, month after month.
One of my most profound spiritual experiences was through consistent meditation. When I was doing it consistently, I had
Right. It's
a,
true. It's absolutely true.
I had a sense of the oneness of all things, and that I was one with everything, and yet I was still me, but that kind of thing. But so I actually did a video on it a few years back, I think.
Yeah.
So
Well, one of the questions that a lot of people get hung up on that I get asked a lot about is, I'm afraid to meditate because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't know if people are afraid, is there something out there, if I'm leaving my body? Well, it's your consciousness. Your consciousness attracts like. So if you make your connection with Source, Creator, God, one of the ascended masters, so you feel confident. When I begin a meditation, I unfold, protect, surround myself in the light of love, in the divine light. Sometimes I add an Holy Archangel Michael's blue violet flames. And I make sure, I am absolutely certain, I'm maybe bringing in the Christ light. It depends on who I literally see or sense is with me. And I am securing my space. And the only thing in my consciousness is love. That's it. Nothing else is. So I'm not attracting anything negative to me because my vibration is in that space. So it's when people are fearful, when they don't have a solid footing. So the way you can begin to do that is secure your space. It's called an invocation. You're invoking the light of love. Some people don't like saying the Christ light or the divine light. I've never had anybody say I have a problem with love. Everybody's always really good with love. So if you enfold, protect, and surround yourself in love, and only think about those experiences or people or objects of your affection that bring in that, you want to bring that vibration of love into your being, into your mind. That will raise up your vibration. It will take you into higher realms. And then you'll experience all of that that's waiting for you. You'll remember who you are. And that's a good statement to go into a meditation with. I remember who I am. Even if you don't, you say it. You say it as if you do, because you're telling yourself to wake up. You can say, I'm awake and I'm staying awake.
Yeah, I do something similar with that too when I meditate, and yeah, you're absolutely right. Fear is, those people who are fearing that, they probably shouldn't until they can learn to overcome that fear, or do something like you said, have some sort of ritual invocation that can help them feel less fearful, because that fear is what attracts I don't know what you would call it, dark or malevolent energies or entities, whatever that may be. So
we conjure them up, we create them.
Yeah.
We really do create them.
And often, most of the time I think it's your fear is manifested.
It's a reflection, right?
Yeah.
But we get our ideas or our supposed knowledge very often based on our experiences. I mean, if we are abused and mistreated, we're creating our idea of what reality is. And so, that needs to be balanced out in other ways. And that's where people with compassion and love can balance that out.
Yeah, I know children, until they're about 7 years old, their brainwave is in the theta state, which is the meditative state for most types of meditation. And so they're an absolute sponge with no filters for everything that's around them, whether, positive or negative. And so, That's why it's important to to teach your children at that age, because they are absorbing everything. And of course, I didn't know that with my children either, and they absorbed some things from me that I absorbed from my parents that I didn't, that I didn't want them to absorb, and I think I did better at it than my parents, but still, they still got some of it, so.
Right, right. Well, I was very blessed, and I'm sure it was part of the divine plan, because I came into a family that did not want to acknowledge my gifts or my abilities, but I had the ability to see and to hear and to communicate with the unseen. So that gave me what I needed to survive here on this planet and shaped my reality, or my extended reality, my super reality consciousness, I guess. Yeah.
I had a decent childhood, but I had a rough time because I was an empath and I didn't know it.
Right.
And so I was feeling all of these emotions and I thought they were mine. And I thought everybody was like that. And it took me till I think I was in my 30s before I really finally realized what was going on and learned how to block out the stuff that I didn't want to be feeling, and I still catch myself now, I'll shield myself usually, but sometimes I don't. And I'll start getting all the stuff. And oh, that's right. I got to put those light shields up to keep the negative emotions out that I don't want, that I don't want to be dealing with at the time. Sometimes I want to deal with them because I want to help somebody, but most of the time it's like, I don't need that, So.
Right. Right.
So how do you think, I guess one of the questions, and maybe you've kind of already answered this somewhat, but how do you feel like you said you've had a couple of NDEs, it sounds like, right? And so how did that impact your life? And do you think your life would have been different had you not had those?
I was just born that way. I just came in that way. So the NDE did not give me any of my gifts or abilities. Like some people have that experience and say they can come back and they're suddenly clairvoyant. So I was already doing that. What the NDE gave to me was an intimate experience so I could relate to other people who have it. That's what I really feel it did.
Oh, okay.
For me.
Yeah, I was looking at stuff, and just, I don't know if I told you this or not, but I was looking for people to come on to interview, and I got on the near death
Experience
group.
page. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Ned Tinian.
yeah, Ned's page,
Yes.
and your post, I think, was the first one on the feed right then and there at that point in time, and I just had a prompting like, I'm going to contact her and see if she wants to come on, because I read the post and I liked it, and I thought, oh, she would be interesting to have on. And I hadn't heard from you. I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of you before, and so I did a quick, search and found a couple things, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I found your webpage, and that's how I got a hold of you. So, no, I got a hold of you on Facebook. I thought, well, she's got a webpage. Right. She's got a Facebook page, and then I found you on Facebook and messaged you.
There's a lot of information out there to be found. So that's why it's so critical to be able to have enough knowledge to have discernment. It's so important. I heard somebody speaking on, I don't know, some podcast just recently, and he said something, and I thought, that's not true. That's not true.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. So you've got to be able to have discernment. Be open to learning, but please take responsibility for learning, one-on-one, so that you have that kind of discernment. And life supporting and life nurturing is a good litmus test for whether somebody is representing the divine light and the light of love. Because if what they're representing is control and power over others and inequality, that is not life supporting and that is not life nurturing. So if you are wondering, are they telling the truth? Is this going to be a good person? Well, is what they're professing life supporting and life nurturing? Are they building you up, or are they tearing you down just to build up their own ego? I mean, these are real basics. It doesn't take a scientist or a genius to know these things, but.
And a sense of humor.
Yeah.
I always tell people if they don't have a sense of humor, I would be suspect. Yeah. So I was going to ask you. Oh, let's see. No, I'm looking at I have a little piece of paper here.
Okay.
See if I missed anything that I wanted to ask. Okay. So you said you were born with with these gifts. Did you ever, at any point in your life, resent it while you were growing up, or feel like it was a burden?
That's a fabulous question. That's a really good question. I grew up in Chicago, and my family did not treasure my gifts. And I remember walking, because I remembered my lifetimes with Christ. I remembered so much of my past lives. I went to the Art Institute of Chicago, and I did spontaneous recall paintings. And I had incredible past life recall. And I remember my mother screaming, "You are not walking out of this house. It's pouring rain." And I had to get away from all of the yelling and the screaming. And I remember walking in the rain and crying, asking God, asking Christ, "Why did you leave me here? Why did you leave me here? I want to come home. I don't want to be here. I hate it here." Because I remembered what it was like when I wasn't here. So I won't say I ever resented my gifts, but it made it at times more challenging to be here because I knew what else was possible. And I would go to school, and kids are stupid. They say dumb things. And I'd come home and I'd say, "Oh, so and so said this and so and so said that." And my mother go, "Well, you never speak to her again." "Okay, Mom." And the next day I come home and we're best friends again because I knew about forgiveness. I knew about compassion. My mom, God bless her, not so much. So we do come in with certain qualities. We just come in with certain qualities that are activated. And if I was to use then Ralph Bergstresser's term, light workers come in and they're here to show the way. That was actually what Christ told me. He told me I was a rebel like him, which I like. Okay, am I going to end up like you? What's the story
Rebels
here?
unite.
Yeah, right. Am I going to end up in the light? Because I'm okay with that. If I end up like you there, I'm good. But that's all I expect to happen, to be honest, because it's where I live. It's compassion, love, forgiveness. But we're challenged. We are challenged to stay in those frequencies. We really are, because this, like I said, this planet is difficult. So aligning yourself with people who are like-minded really helps. It really helps a lot. If you don't have this physically supportive family, your bloodline isn't supportive, then create an extended family so that you can have that kind of support.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. There's a saying, and I forget who said it. It said, "Show me your 5 closest friends, and I'll show you your future." You know, and
Oh, wow, that's good.
yeah, because who you're around. I sometimes turn it. It's a little more crude. I say, if you're going to go wading around in the sewer, you're bound to get some on you. You know, so don't try to. I mean, sometimes you have to do some things you don't want to, but you don't want to make that. You don't want to surround yourself with the wrong tribe, so to
Well,
speak.
yeah, I mean, everybody serves a purpose, and I don't want to get political here. Oh, kind of, I do, but
Not too much, because that really divides people. As you know.
as I know, but everybody serves a purpose. Everything serves a
Yeah,
purpose. And who you align yourself with, they're either peace loving or they're war loving. There's either peacemakers or warmongers. And one of the things that I guess we can call them extraterrestrials. I don't really like that term, but just again, giving form to it. They told me that the peacemakers were going to leave this planet and it will be left to the warmongers if things continue on the way they are in this frequency. This is how it's going to go. So either way, the outcome is assured. Either way, people who are peacemakers are going to be fine. The warmongers are going to take a little bit longer to wake up.
Have you heard the term New Earth? Have you heard some of that
Yes, yeah,
banter?
and I've used it loosely
Yeah.
because I honestly, guidance hasn't called it New Earth to me, but again, just for communication purposes, I've said that. But if we're talking about quantum physics and parallel universes and, you know, the many dimensions and many universes, I mean, I remembered Jupiter having been a home for me. I started talking about Jupiter from the time I was a kid. And I've met two people in my lifetime, the clients who I was doing readings for, who both mentioned Jupiter in exactly, I mean, literally verbatim, the same thing I had told my mom when I was just a little kid. So I
Wow.
knew they too remembered Jupiter, because how else do you get three completely unrelated individuals saying the same thing? But it's not that Jupiter, our scientists would say, oh, it doesn't support life. You know, humans can't live there. No, but the advanced Jupiter, you
Right.
know,
Right.
because we
Yeah.
don't have this physical body. So the mind has to expand in order to even grasp any of this.
Yeah. Some of the ancient wisdom teaches that there's life on Venus, but it's not like human, like we understand it. So,
Right,
uh,
exactly.
but yeah, yeah, it's pretty interesting uh, what's out there
Well, I
sometimes.
would say to the listeners here, don't rush into fear about anything. Get knowledge instead. Knowledge will get rid of the fear. If you make a connection and realize who you are by connecting with your source and your creator, you won't live in fear. You will actually be able to circumvent a lot of negative experiences once you come into that awareness, that expanded consciousness. And it depends on where you put your focus. It really does. But I have a world of compassion and empathy who are raised for kids who become the adults who are raised with abuse and raised with negativity. You know, you need somebody to show you there's a better way. For me, I had a couple relatives out of all of them, a couple relatives who were extremely loving and selfless and kind, and they showed me another way. And then I had Christ, and I had guides and relatives who had passed on from other lifetimes who showed up, and they were my companions to show me there's another way. So this is not the only life you've ever lived. If you're married, this is not your only spouse. These are not your only kids. You know, your pets have been with you before. I mean, there's so much more to know, but you have to open your mind and you have to get rid of the little perimeters and, you know, tunnel vision in
Right.
order to begin to comprehend what is out there in the universe, because that's one of the downfalls of being on earth is limited consciousness. And so you've got to have that. I was born with this drive, this push. Somebody once said to me, he was giving readings from where he was giving readings from in a public forum. And he said to me in front of everybody, he said, truth, that's what you want. Truth is what's driving you. You want to know the truth. And I thought, wow, boy, is he right about that. Because I've always wanted to know the truth, and I've never understood why people choose the alternative. It's just the unkindness and the qualities that bring life down are just not necessary. So choose life supporting, choose life nurturing, help bring people up. Don't tear people down to make yourself bigger. Those are the qualities of godliness and ascended masters. So it's easy to tell. It really is.
That's a great message. I was going to ask you before you started on that about if you had any parting messages for the audience, which you read my mind, obviously.
I
So
told you I'm just following God. The Holy Spirit guidance is telling me what to say next.
and so yeah, I think we're about at an hour or so. So
Okay.
we can
Thank
leave it at
you.
that. And I would love to have you on again. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate it. And is there any other parting message you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Guidance is saying you're never too old to start something new when it's life supporting and life nurturing. you are never too old to start something new. If you feel a calling or a passion, if you want to write a book, write a song, sing a song, if you're feeling that creative part of you inside, do it. If it's going to bring you joy, if it's going to make you feel more alive, do it. And the more creative you are, the more it opens up those intuitive centers. When people are sitting at desks and counting numbers all day, they're in this lower vibration of the earth energy. So to get out of it, another avenue is to be creative, be out in nature, thus my background. Be creative, be out in nature, and allow your senses to awaken, whether it's the mountains or the ocean, and find love wherever you can experience love, because love is the vibration and the frequency and the energy that will heal you, that will awaken you, and that will show you who you are. There you are.
Wonderful. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time out to do this with me. And yeah, I'm one of those guys who, it's like, I'm too old to do anything new, but age is just a number, and so, and I've known I should do something like this for a long time, and I have kind of done some half-hearted attempts at it. And now I'm thinking back, it's like, man, I should have started doing this a couple of years ago at least.
I feel you are fully engaged. This is 100%.
Well, I appreciate it. You were the right one. That's why I got the prompting. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna talk to her and see if she wants to come on.
Thank you.
And
Well, the title of my website, answersfromthelight.com, is because that's where my information comes from, Answers from the Light. I know it's a long website, answersfromthelight.com. It is the truth.
we'll link it in the description.
Yeah.
And we'll link to your book also.
Yeah, that's how I did it, because that's where the information comes from. So thank you for introducing me and having me on your show.
Thank you so much.
Okay.